Good morning students, I welcome you all for the online class of economics. Today we will be going to learn the topic problems of poverty in India. When we talk about students, this is a chapter in which we will be going to, after liberalization, the topic, we are going to proceed with this particular topic, that is the problems of poverty faced by India at the time of independence, and now what is the situation of poverty in India, that we will be going to learn, which is a part of term 1 also. So the chapter name is problem of poverty in India. In this you can see we will be going to learn the topic who are the poor, categories of poor people, concept of poverty and poverty line, concept of poverty, relative and absolute poverty, different norms, methods of fixing poverty line, magnitude and nature of poverty, visual circle of poverty, causes of poverty, policies and programs to alleviate poverty, general measures, special program to fight poverty and unemployment, flaws in anti-poverty programs. So these are the various things which we will be going to learn, students, so as to learn about the poverty. Now we will be proceeding introduction part. Poverty means what, student? Poverty doesn't means only the poor people who belongs to the who are not having any thing to fulfill their needs also. So that is not poor. Actually poverty means when we are lacking with some of the ability or the some of the things we are not having done, it is known as poverty of that particular area. Poverty is one of the most important and pressing problem facing Indian economic today. It is a socio-economic problems. The concept and content of poverty differ from country to country depending upon what a particular country accepts as a reasonably good standard of living for its people. United Nations Development Program has defined income poverty as lack of necessities of material well-being, and human poverty has denial of opportunity for living a tolerable life. In India, poverty levels are synonymous with deprivation, malnutrition, illiteracy, ill health, and poor quality of life. A picture which is agonizing from any standard of human existence is known as poverty. So the basic problem of India, poverty has been explained. United Nations Development Program has defined income poverty, that is the best. The poverty which is in people is not able to fulfill their income, they are not having any earning, that it will come as income poverty. It is income poverty has lack of necessities of material well-beings, and human poverty means denial of opportunity for living a tolerable life, that is known as human poverty. So let us read more about the poverty levels. Who are the poor, students? The people. Have you ever wondered about the lifestyle of people around you? Like cobblers, rag pickers, vendors, beggars, pushcart vendors, servants, etc. They are the poor people of our country, student. What are their common features? The common features of poor people are as follows. They do not have 2 meals a day. They possess few assets in terms of clothes, bedding, utensils, etc. They reside in kacha houses, hutments with walls made of baked muds and roofs made of grass, thatch, bamboo, and wood. There are landless in rural areas, and even if some of them possess land, it is only dry or wasteland. They do not have basic literacy and skills. They have ill health and physical weaknesses. So these are the people who are considered as the poor, student. You can see here the list: hunger, malnutrition, deprivation, not getting anything easily, anything, exploitation, illiteracy, ill health, powerlessness, lack of freedom, lack of representation, poor quality of life, heavy indebtedness. This all people comes in poor. Not only the person who is surviving in the roadside, street side, that is not only the poor, but these are all peoples who are having this poverty is considered as poor. They do not have access to safe drinking water. They do not have access to electricity. They cook food with cooking fuel has firewood and cow dung cake. They take loan for every small and needs of their and are unable to repay it. They are exploited by their employers. They cannot afford to see a doctor when they are unwell. They cannot send their children to schools. This list is endless, and to realize that 238.5 million persons are in a state of being poor gives a grim picture of the problem of poverty. Categories of poor people, if we talk, there are 3 categories of poor people, student. One is chronic poor, second is transient poor, and third is the non-poor. It means never poor. There are the rich people. Chronic poor, when we talk, student, there are 2 kinds of people. There are again classified into 2 kinds. One is always poor and one is usually poor. Always poor, the poor people who begs, that is always poor. Usually poor, they usually live below the poverty line. Example, casual workers like landless workers, etc. will be coming there. Transient poor, when we talk, there are again two kinds: churning poor and occasionally poor. When we talk churning poor, they regularly move in and out of poverty. Example, small farmers, seasonal workers. Sometimes their situation comes poverty, again it may settle, and again it become poor when there no crop production is there. That is churning poor. Occasionally poor, when we talk student, they are rich most of the time, but may sometimes have a patch of bad luck. Example, people who gamble. That is known as the occasionally poor. Means there are the rich people, but at the time of playing games like gambling and this time they lose the particular thing. And never poor, there are those poor people who live above the poverty line. They are non-poor. Example, doctors, lawyers, profession, etc. I think the three categories of poor people are clear to you people. Note, poverty under British rule. The main goals of the British Raj in India were to provide a market for British exports, to make India send its debt payments to Britain, to provide manpower for the British imperial armies. The British rule had a substantial negative impact on the Indian economy. It is clear from the following. There was substantial deindustrialization in India. Imports of manufactured cotton cloth from England displaced local producers of India. India was reduced to become exporter of cotton, yarn and importer of cloth. Indian industries were forced to produce raw materials for the British at low prices and import manufactured goods at high prices. Indian farmers were forced to grow more of cash crops and export goods, food grains to get revenue from the Britishers. British policies significantly raised rural taxes that made merchants and moneylenders to become large landowners. They exploited the people by paying low wages and charging high interest on loans, etc. During the British Raj in India, over 70% of Indians were engaged in the agricultural sector. The impact of adverse British policies were felt most on this sector. So that was about the British Raj in India. Concept of poverty and poverty line when we talk students. Concept of poverty says that poverty in India has been defined as that situation in which an individual fails to earn income sufficient to buy his minimum means of subsistence like food, cloth, etc. That is known as poverty. So in India, it is a situation in which an individual fails to earn such earning also that he can purchase his minimum needs. The minimum means of subsistence includes a reasonable, satisfactory level of nutritional diet, minimum required clothing, housing and furniture, etc. Minimum level of health facilities, clean water and education. Relative and absolute poverty, when we talk student, distinction is necessary between two types of poverty. One is relative poverty and one is absolute poverty. When we talk about relative poverty student, it refers to poverty of people in comparison to other people, regions or nations. When we make comparison between two people and we make decide that the person is poor, it is relative poverty. Relative poverty indicates that a group or class of people belonging to the lower income group is poorer when compared to those belonging to higher income group. Such poverty of one group is only related to the affluence of the other group. And since incomes are unequally distributed in almost all the countries, whether developed or underdeveloped, relative poverty exists in every country, be it USA or India. Relative poverty can be measured by the concept of Lorentz curve and Gini coefficient. What we are concerned here is not the relative but absolute poverty. In terms of Gini coefficient, India's inequality was 36.8, Economic Survey 2010 and 11. Absolute poverty, when we talk student, it refers to the total number of people living below the poverty line. It is a state of fixed deprivation. It means it cannot be compared, it is a fixed from their birth to the death. The concept is relevant for less developed countries like India. In India, the concept of absolute poverty is used to measure poverty line. Absolute poverty can be measured by the concept of poverty line. In poverty line, minimum level of consumption standard is laid down. All those people who fail to reach this minimum consumption level are poor in India. Nearly 28.6% of the total population is absolutely poor. Difference between relative and absolute poverty, you can see student in the picture.